Welcome to Under the Fig Tree podcast. In today's episode, hosts Reverend Micah Glenn and Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt talk theology and life as they meditate under the fig tree.
What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Under the Fig Tree podcast. I am your host, Reverend Micah Glenn, the Director of Recruitment here at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, joined by my co-host, Miss Kati Gaschler. How are you?
I'm good. We're coming off our busy season.
We are beginning to come off the busy season. And, we have like an enrollment cycle and, we're getting our fall class put together, which then gives us, well, you haven't quite done it yet.
We'll get busy in a different way.
I was going to say, yeah, the year just changes is what it comes down to.
Exciting.
The summer happens, vocatio, classes, travel, recruiting stuff. And then it'll be August, and it'll be orientation. You'll be a seasoned veteran in our department, and you'll have completed the full cycle.
Yep. We'll see how that goes.
Today, we're joined by a special guest, Reverend Will Hanke. How are you?
Doing great. Yeah.
And so, Will, I didn't mean to cut you off so quickly, but I wanted to introduce you because I called you Reverend Will Hanke, but you're also a local pastor here at Mount Calvary Lutheran Church in Brentwood. But you also work with us at the seminary as one of our student recruitment ambassadors.
There you go.
Yep, absolutely.
So, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here. So,
how are things going today for you and for life? And
ministry's good. I've been at Mount Calvary Lutheran Church and Preschool for 12 years, and 12 years coming up in June. So that's been an awesome season, and enjoyed every part of ministry there in that place and ministering to those people. So I got to be at All Nations last night. So I was at one of our partner churches that Mount Calvary's partnered with since the beginning, and Reverend Glenn spent some time helping them. And I was doing their communion service last night. So great to spend time, not just at my church, but with a church that we partner with and care for and love. So,
sure. Was that your first time preaching there?
It was my first time preaching there. So we've been there since All Nations began, but I've only been there to different events, never to be able to lead a communion service. So it was awesome.
Right. So it's a great group of people.
Yeah.
Whom I love and miss.
Yeah.
But they now have an SMP student.
Yeah.
John Christopher. He's gonna be great. Be a good pastor for them.
He's loving studying. It's
For sure.
awesome. He's loving the seminary, which is cool when you get to watch what we do and help people come into that place and then live that out. And so just watching him and caring for his people, and I've had some times to meet him for lunch and hear about his studies and what's going on at seminary. It's been awesome.
Cool. Well, I was going to ask him what a student recruitment ambassador is, but maybe we should hold that.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll make sure if I begin to ask that question.
Yeah.
We'll cut it in post-production, and then you're the one who brought the question up.
Yeah.
But before we get there, before we get too lost in conversation, because it's very easy to do that, especially with like asking questions about Mount Calvary and what ministry has been like there. Before we get there, would you mind sharing with us and our listeners what your story is, what your pathway, what led you to become a pastor?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up with two grandpas that were pastors and got to watch them, and they were awesome. They were in little churches, even smaller than Mount Calvary is. And in those churches, they certainly cared for people and loved them and did wonderful things, and they were superheroes to me. So even though I had uncles and people encouraging me to say, hey, you should consider ministry, I saw my grandpas as like, wait, they're untouchable people to me. Like, how could I ever live up to that? Now, we're still talking, I was pretty young. Like, people were starting to encourage me in ministry 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like, had the Michael Jordan was around. So like the basketball dream, which was never really going to happen. But in my head, it was.
Exactly.
And when I saw some attorneys, and I liked that whole like conversation and helping people in that way. So my uncles were helping me to think through this, and I was watching my grandpas. But it wasn't until I got to confirmation, and it was my senior pastor who shared his story. and his story of how he became a pastor, which was he was headed to college and he was thinking about being an engineer. And then somebody at the last minute stopped him and said, you should consider ministry.
Yeah.
And he dropped everything and followed that calling. And he's led many, many people from my home church to ministry, which is really awesome. So, but at that point, I knew normal guys do this. Like it's not just my grandpa superheroes, but like there's normal people who live this out every single day. So,
well, and by the time we get to grandpa's age, at least for many of us, if not most of us, we've been pastors for a few seasons of life.
That's right.
And so like when you're looking at a seasoned pastor and they're just doing stuff, sometimes it just, it can look easy insofar as, your pastor's there. He shows up for stuff. He says the right thing. He preaches on Sunday and he's just on top of stuff. But that takes work and practice and growth. It's not something that happens automatically.
Right.
And so then, when you're a part of it, not only from like coming to the seminary to become a pastor and then going out into the field, but also in the recruiting aspect. Yeah, we're all just regular guys.
Yeah.
From start to finish, it's just like I said, how much practice have you had?
That's right.
But I think everyone should view their grandpas as superheroes.
Yeah,
100%.
And their pastors.
No, both. Of
Yeah.
course. Well, I mean, it's certainly somebody to look up to and aspire to be. Absolutely. Well, and then. But also, yes.
But they are just normal people.
It's one of those things where, I'm always a little cautious where people will have listened to the podcast or they read something. It's like, well, when you come to the seminary and you meet one of us in person, not just me, but even our faculty members who are, way more accomplished than I am, just remember we're guys.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually had someone stop me for the very first time this weekend because they recognized me here. So shout out to Carly in Olathe, Kansas. Olathe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Katie's
But
officially
anyway.
a rock star.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I'm the superhero now.
Yep.
That's right.
But anyway, back to Will.
Well, and eventually, Katie's mentioned this as well because she's starting the deaconess program in the fall. And so, when orientation comes around, the people that we've talked to over the year that you've now been in from the podcast, I'm like, oh, that's Katie Gaschler.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
That's awesome.
So maybe you will also get some fame out of this.
Yeah, we'll see me.
Well, I mean, but Will,
Well, you're going to be doing some traveling for us, or you already do some traveling for us.
he's been doing.
Yeah.
Will goes to a lot of things for us.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. But as we're talking about things that people have done that people recognize, I mean, for the last 2 years, Will has been one of the major faces of the seminary. We have a recruiting video with you and one of our former deaconess students, Sarah Ruish, that was first shown at the National Youth Gathering and has since been showed where you shared your story a little bit.
Yeah.
Not quite in depth, I don't think, just because the
video was only a short amount of time, but an awesome experience. And then, trying to gauge kids in high school, which is my heart, because when I really began saying I was on the path to ministry, so, talking to middle schoolers and high schoolers, which I've done at Missouri District Gathering, in this area, but also just, like thinking about those people at the National Youth Gathering talking about that. So,
no, it's such a crucial, important time. Somebody was just, not somebody. I was so by the time this is released, something I did yesterday, I was on the coffee hour with Andy Bates and Sarah Golseth. I recorded a little 13-minute spot with them yesterday. And we're kind of doing the same thing, like why high schoolers, and it's just we gotta, at least get them to consider, not even just to consider, but to just give them the opportunity to hear that church work is a career. That people pursue, that you can go to college for, and to have that on their mind as they're thinking about it. Because if we don't ask, they'll never think about it. That's usually how I approach it.
I think one of the things that's changed for me in helping the seminary has been making sure that we encourage kids, not say, oh, they might do that, or they're really gifted in acting, or they're really gifted in athletics, but instead to say, wait a minute, they also could be really gifted in ministry. And
Right.
sometimes I think we've missed opportunities because we've waited too long. And so it's my heart to not miss those chances to have that dialogue. And what I think is so cool is that, like, I was never going to talk to Michael Jordan, right? Like, I was never going to like be able to sit down with him and go, what tips should you give me? But I find when I'm at a recruiting event, high schoolers and middle schoolers who come up to me and realize that, yeah, I'll talk to you all day long
Right.
about ministry and that I want to do that. It's just a different feel than maybe somebody who's untouchable in a career that they're considering. So,
Yeah. Well, I think we kind of got sidetracked, but you said you were encouraged from age 9 or 10, and then by high school, you said you knew you wanted to go into ministry.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
Sure. So then by the time I was a confirmation student at 13 is the date I say of when it changed, and I just was headed on that track. And pretty quickly by 8th grade said I was going to go to Concordia Chicago and then knew I was going to come here to Concordia St. Louis and seminary here. And I just, I always was on that track. So I wanted to talk to the seminary in high school, like when they came, like I just, want to hear more about what's going to happen because that was my mindset once set was there. So.
Well, we have a lot of students and faculty members on. If you don't mind, would you be willing to share a little bit of what your life is like as a pastor in a local congregation? Sure.
So I've had kind of like both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Because I went to a vicarage, an internship where it was like a small church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And at first, being a single guy, I wasn't really thrilled, but it turned out to be an amazing experience. And Jesus really gave me every opportunity I had prayed for, even though I questioned whether that could happen in that church size. But I got to do outreach and other variety of connecting with the community because of the size of our church. So I was able to spend my time with our church, but also then spend some time in the community with young adults, which is what I wanted to do. And then I went to 2 large churches as a youth pastor. And that was a lot of activities and encouraging high school and middle schoolers. And I spent 5 years in 2 of our larger congregations in the LCMS. But I think kind of my Jonah moment was to come back to the small church because I love knowing people and being in relationship with them.
Yeah.
And so I know my whole congregation. I know what they're facing and going through. I have the availability to be able to talk to them whenever they need and to be there for them. And I love that part of ministry. But we also had to decide, like, what are we going to do with Mount Calvary Church in preschool financially to be in an unchurched culture and live that out. And my skill set is a Ranger developer in my Strength Finders 2.0. And so, like, I kind of got the thing, okay, how do we arrange and develop what we have here, which is really awesome, 9 acres of land that the Lord has blessed us with, and previous congregation members had the brilliant idea to purchase, but what do we do with that? And at times that became a burden. And how do we make that a blessing? And last year we sold to the city of Brentwood. We built an endowment that will help us to deal with the deferred maintenance and bless that. We've also been able then to work with our preschool to hire staff and really get the staffing in place for what we need as a church in preschool. So, yeah.
You've been there for 12 years. And how long have you been a pastor in the church?
So I've been a pastor since 2007, so we're coming 17 years now, I guess. Yeah. So because this was the time of call day, and then into my first call would have been in June. So yeah.
And so between your current call and I know you pretty well, I imagine Mount Calvary, you don't even think about other things. You're just kind of there. You're fixed, which I think is actually a good thing. But those first 5 years where I can really relate to you, a couple different calls. What was that transition like for you? What was the process? What were some good things and what were some challenges? And how did God, along with family and things of that nature, how did you get through that? And what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I was as a typical Missouri boy, the dream of like, what does California look like?
Sure.
And experiencing Orange, California, and a large church, which I grew up in a pretty large church, but this was double that size.
Yeah.
So that was a big jump. And then just different personalities and just the way that the states are made up. There's a lot of amazing entrepreneurs that are in California that come up with jobs that I was always like, man, how did you even think of that, to do that? Because I wasn't used to that at being in Missouri. But that also created, pressure that I wasn't used to too, to drive in that way. And that was challenging. And youth ministry, when I came out in 2007, was really challenging. We were switching from a programmatic culture where we could rely upon the programs we put at a church to encourage kids to come, but they were starting to get those phones and they were starting to get programs. They didn't need the church to provide that.
Right.
And so then it became a relational part, and that was a hard transition for the church. And so I kind of felt like I was in the thick of that from 2007 to 2012, and just working through both of those large congregations to process that, of what that meant.
I've never heard it put that way, from programmatic to relational, but that makes so much sense. Yeah, because not to, disparage phone use, but when you use it so much and you're getting everything, from there, you're lacking in relationships often, not all the time.
Yeah.
And what I like about being at a small church is the relationships and the community. And so that can be really important. But yeah.
So we transitioned into knowing that, like, just California in itself, did it feel like it fit for Mindy and I? And we had those hard questions, and we talked to our district president about that. We were really super honest, and that's what I tell anybody when you land in a call where it's like, does this fit or not? You rely upon your district presidents to help you process that, and then think about that. And then we agreed that it would probably be best if I headed back towards the Missouri area. And Mindy's from St. Louis, so it worked out great to land back in St. Louis and have family here. So,
Nice. So you mentioned that you were single on Vicarage.
Yes.
Yes.
It was heartbreaking for me. My girlfriend broke up with me in seminary. It was devastating. I was with a bunch of dudes, and I was single again. And I wanted to do ministry and be married. That's what So I was.
What a nightmare.
I was pretty frustrated.
Oof. But we do have a lot of single students.
Yeah.
But maybe talk about Vicarage as a single person, and
sure,
because I don't want to disparage marriage or singleness, but when you're single, you can do things that you wouldn't normally have time for, or be, available for if you were married, and vice versa. So,
and of course I was tainted because I wanted to be married. Mm-hmm. But what I learned was that the Lord provided a family for me there. Because I think when you go to college and you go, hey, I want to experience being alone again, like that first feeling of leaving home, and where at first it's so uncomfortable, but there's also something so amazing about this new freedom that you're getting, and you're trying to figure out, do I miss my family, or am I excited about what the future is?
Right.
To experience that again is what I experienced on Vicarage, because I went alone to a city I had no clue about, had never really been through except to drive to Florida to see my grandpa. And there I was trying to navigate this city. Now, I had a beautiful Jeep that I had purchased, and so it made the mountains even nicer. But it was a navigation part for me. But to your question, it was I was able to do a young adult service on Tuesday night and not worry about my family because I didn't have one. And just spend time with them. And when they were like, let's go to Chili's afterwards, I could spend time building relationships with them as long as they wanted. It was just up to me to figure that out and decide when to do that. But I still set boundaries. I mean, this seminary is great right now, and through the time I've been here, of helping you understand you need a healthy balance, so you don't work all the time. And so understanding taking that day off and is very important, even when you're single.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Those are boundaries I still find myself learning how to build. Well, I don't want to rehash your breakup. That's not what I'm trying to ask. But for you, so you graduated from here in 2007, which means you arrived, in the fall of 2003?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And so if you could take us back, because some things have changed and a lot of things have changed. What was your life as a seminarian like when you were here?
And I loved it. I mean, we talk about this as a recruitment team.
Yeah.
The community here was incredible. The friendships, the brotherhood, the people that I know from this place are great friends that I lean on. I've talked to 2 of them this week. And those, like I have friends from college, and we may talk to each other maybe once a year. But the pastor friends that I have, the ministry workers and that I spent time with in this place, we talk often about what's going on with our lives and where it is. And as we get busier and our kids get older, it changes a little bit. But the community here, just the intramural program was so incredible. You already mentioned, like, I love sports, but being able to play sports in this place with a team and a group of people and not just study, but have fun with them was so awesome. And then I got to play basketball my final year on our preachers team. But through the years, there was just that community was so incredible.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. It's like one of those things where, well, there is life off of the seminary campus. Yeah. I mean, and for us, you have to do field work and things like that, and you could go and do stuff off, but being able to find a place to have balance in studying, because the academics are very rigorous, but then also just be able to do stuff outside of the classroom. Yeah, it's a big part of it. I played one intramural game this year.
Okay.
I hadn't since I'd been called back to the seminary for different reasons, but I was like, this year I'll give it a try. And I went out and played one football game.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I don't think, like, for a nearly 40-year-old man, it was a bad game. But I was incredibly sore afterwards.
Yeah.
And there were 2 plays in particular. One that should have been, well, 2 actually, now that I think about it, should have both been interceptions. Like 5 years ago would have been easy for me to intercept. And one I just simply dropped, and it's just because, like, I've been playing ball in a while, so your ball hits your hands and it falls to the ground. It's like, okay, that happens. And the other one is, like, I could see the play in my mind, and I went to jump, and my body just won't do what my mind is telling it to do anymore. And I was like, oh, like, this is all those conversations where guys were like, it doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it really started. And in my mind, I was like, I should go to the gym and try to, like, jump and grab the hoop. But I was like, but what happens when I can't?
That's right.
But how am I going to feel about myself? So I didn't go and try.
It makes you appreciate the second career guys that come here and still play intramurals with us
Yep.
and still do that. Because I was young when I was here. And we would be like, come on, we got to get you. Like, get out there. What are you worried about? You know?
Yeah.
But I was 27 and 23. And
Exactly.
So.
No, when I was a student, like, if we were playing flag football, because it's a narrow field, it's a flag football field, and somebody throw the ball across the field, it's like, that's not enough space. Like, because it's not like they're going to put on a line.
Yeah.
They're going to put a bunch of air, and I can run across the field and
Yeah.
intercept it. No, I couldn't do that today. Just being completely honest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've
But
talked
you're
about
over
my
it.
age.
It doesn't bother you. You're clearly over it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm over it. It doesn't bother me. I don't like what you just tried to do there.
Yeah, I can tell.
Oh, we've had this conversation. There was a couple of, Christy works with us, and her husband were on the podcast, and, they guessed my age.
Yeah, was that before we started recording, or was that on it? I can't remember now. But they guessed your age.
No, I think we left that in the podcast.
Oh.
I would never know. Yeah. Which is fine. They guessed over 40, and I'll be 40 in August.
Okay.
It's
Another thing he's definitely over.
Like that
He's
that
fine.
one I have no shame. Like, I don't think I'm having a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Clearly.
But like, Johnny turned 10 last November. I think Johnny turning 10, my oldest turning 10, is harder than turning 40.
Yeah.
But I do have, like, high school classmates who have kids in college.
Yeah.
And
It's crazy.
it feels that way.
So we just had a visitor a couple weeks ago, and he's looking around, and he's like, I could be some of these guys' dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure, but you're not the only one. Like, we have 22 through 60-year-olds, or even older, I don't know,
Yeah.
here, which I think is really cool.
And that's cool thing about the community.
Yeah.
Because it's not just people my age I was friends with, but it was people that I go see in the ministry field, or they come here for an event like next week for the symposium, and I get to see them again and see what they're doing and what their life is like, and we have that connection because we were in class together and we went through this place together. So,
no, you're never. Well, you're never too old to consider coming to the seminary, and as long as you can be too young to come here, but only because of the requirements. But even then, when I wasn't quite second career when I got here, but I was 27.
Okay.
And so I was fresh out of college, but not like fresh out of college. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You know what
sure. Yeah.
I guess they might have classified me as a second career student, but I was just
I'll be a second career student.
A long bloomer.
You will.
Sometimes I say a late bloomer, but I'm gonna start saying I was a long bloomer.
Okay.
Thorough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I wasn't a spring bloomer. I was like that late summer bloomer.
Sure.
There we go. Well, we've already. Never mind. I'm gonna back off that question. I'm gonna let you ask your original question.
Yeah.
There we go.
So you are one of our student recruitment ambassadors.
Yeah.
And we have 4 of them.
Yes.
Can you explain? What do you do?
So I've been here since the beginning with Micah and I doing this student recruitment ambassador thing together, where he's director of recruitment and I've been doing the ambassador. And I had conversations with the seminary that I would consider something like this. I didn't really think they were going to come up with a position when I had those conversations, but then they did. And then I felt like, okay, I will do this. And what it means is that I get to do be a pastor and at my church, but then I get to occasionally go and spend time at events and recruiting people, or just intentionally thinking about that with what I'm doing with ministry. And that means that I make pastors more aware of what does it mean to help understand, and also make it easier for them because they're busy and ministry workers are busy and deaconesses are busy. And so it's like, how do you help them say, like, if you know somebody, just pass them to me and I'll help them get connected with seminary. And just lightening, like, it doesn't have to mean that their life-changing decision is right now. Right. We just want to start that conversation with them. And so we do that simply with our QR code and getting them to just give us, share information with us so we can stay connected with them, whether they're a middle schooler or they're 20-year-old who's ready to move into seminary now, or they're 40 or 60 or whatever it is. And so it's been a wonderful thing because I can be in the grind of ministry, and then all of a sudden I get to go talk to somebody who's just like considering it and having that conversation, and it's been awesome. So the 4 years have flown by as a student recruitment ambassador, and I've loved every minute of it. So
yeah, and you'll be at the Higher Things in Arkansas this year.
Yeah.
So
all right. Yeah.
if someone's there, you might see him.
Yeah.
So
look out for him. He'll have. We won't say exactly what he'll have, but he'll have some swag.
Some new swag.
Scan our QR code and you'll get a gift from us. It's one of those things where, like, over the 4 years I was the one who wrote the original job description. Yeah. And it's changed over a couple of years just because of, when we started, was have these conversations, network, talk to influencers, talk to prospective students, try to help us find them. And then how do we stay in contact with them is one of the driving conversations that led to us acquiring Slate, which is our system of how we manage our interactions with people. It's it's customer relationship management tool, but nobody that name is.
I always forget what that is. So.
Well, and if you say CRM, people don't know what that is. There's loads of them out there, but for instance, like again, what's good contact information? How do we stay in contact with people? Because we used to have these cards, and back in the day, a pastor would fill out a referral card and pass it on to us, and we try to hang on to that, and we try to contact them from that. But we just live in a digital world, and things like that. But also to where now we can show up to events, and you can just scan our QR code. And that sends us some emails that we begin to reach out to people, invite them to Vocatio, invite them to come and see our campus. and having a team of people. And so it's you and 3 other pastors now. The team has gone through changes over the 4 years, some good changes, some kind of still R&D changes, some reduction in things that you don't always like to see that happen. But yes, we have Pastor Micah Steiner out in Colorado, Pastor James Cleland down in Texas, and Herman Novelli, who's also on our alumni council. Just a team of rock stars to make managing it very simple. Yeah. But we get invited to a lot of things, and having guys that can go out and help represent the seminary,
alleviate the travel,
and extend
you guys.
Want to extend our reach as well is remarkable. But you and Jesse Keeker, one of our admissions officers, have done something starting last fall. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, Katie's been involved too.
Yeah.
She just gave me an update, I think, today.
Yep.
Army of Volunteers. And we keep what I love about this team, what we've done in admissions and recruiting, and what you guys have done, and is really just think of creative ways to connect with people. And so while we have had this relational and use your skills and expand team, we've also had what can we do to just be in every congregation. And so we piloted Army of Volunteers, which was, let's get a volunteer from one church in a circuit to go around to that circuit and visit and come on a Sunday and just stand there and represent the seminary and have the QR code and have a chance to win AirPod 3s and just have that conversation with people so we can be connected. And so, Reverend Keeker and I got to go through the list of the Missouri District and say, who do we know? I've spent almost my whole life in the Missouri District because I grew up in Kansas City and then have been back in St. Louis. So that short time in California, I was in the Pacific Southwest. But we then, went through each of those circuits and said, who do we know? How do we connect with that pastor? How do we help him understand what we're doing? And make it really easy for him to find a volunteer and for us to communicate with that volunteer. And that's part of what Katie does and Reverend Keeker's done. And I got to be a part of that, finding those volunteers and those pastors to connect with. So.
And what's cool is that it's also dual branded with Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
So if someone sees one of our volunteers and they scan the QR code, their information goes to both seminaries. Right. So they have a buy-in too.
Yep.
Which is really cool because it's not just about us, although, we want everyone to come here, but we ultimately want more pastors and deaconesses. So.
Right.
And,
exactly.
Yeah, goes to both.
It's been fun. It's been cool to watch and see the volunteers get out there, and it takes a little bit for everybody to understand what we're doing when we first introduced it to them. But now we're seeing more and more Facebook posts. We're seeing more and more volunteers that are making it around to the churches. More and more pastors that are getting it and understanding that it's real simple to bring this volunteer in and let them just have a table and talk to your people as they come through their Sunday morning routine.
Yeah, and it takes most of the pressure off the pastor.
Yeah,
because all he has to do is help find a volunteer, and then that's all he has to do.
Yeah.
And then there's been 2 volunteers from Texas that heard about this. Mm-hmm. So we're piloting it in Missouri, but we have I think there's someone out in California too that heard about it.
There might be.
So it's just kind of popping up everywhere. So.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, and if you're listening and you want us to do it in your district, conversations of how we scale it are taking place. It's always hard to say be patient with us with something like this because there's nothing more exciting than having lay people who want to come and partner with us and help us do this work. At the end of the day, so again, I've been the director of recruitment for 4 years, and we used to a big practice and one that's still incredibly valuable. This is why we have the Army of Volunteers, is being present on Sunday mornings, because prospective students are going to be at churches on Sunday mornings. And that's just the reality of it. But with 6,000 congregations, I could go to a new congregation every single Sunday and completely neglect my own spiritual welfare. And do that. but it would take me years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Over a decade to visit every congregation in the LCMS. And then over that decade, I'd miss people because I hadn't been back
You
to
have to
another
start over
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
Yeah, it was
And
the wrong Sunday, or it was the
Yeah, exactly. And so having it's one of these things as we've been having these conversations. Well, how do we invite the church to help us in this endeavor? And it started with Drop Your Nets.
Yep.
Just throwing it out there and this podcast and saying, please help us. But now we're trying to find ways to equip people. And so that would just take some resources. And as we continue to figure that out and more people come and partner alongside us. But having you on our team, being able to help us work in the district and recruit those people. I mean, there's so many things with the student recruitment ambassadors to where could we have done it without having that team alongside us? And we might have found different ways. Would they have been as efficient, as effective? That's always the question. Yeah. And so, I've always been really humbled that was, again, Ben Haupt asked me to do a lot of different tasks when I first started. But the student recruitment ambassador team was one of the top of the list, getting a job description and a team put together. And I've just been remarkably humbled by what's transpired over the last 4 years. Because it was challenging at first. It's like, what do we do, and how do we do it?
Sure.
And then there was COVID.
Yeah. Well, we started in the middle of COVID.
Right.
So
and it was just like,
you called me in 2020, in May of 2020.
Yeah.
I'm like, Will, we're gonna should we try this?
Well,
now?
We didn't know when COVID restrictions were going to end. And so it's like, yep, we're going to get going. Here's a job description. Come alongside us. And yeah, it was challenging. And then coming out of COVID, it was even more challenging. And then, you start these things early in a career where you're really going to get into something. You're trying to figure it out. Sometimes, it does take a while to see a thing have success and some failures, and to stick with it, and to really work with it. And with the guys that are on the team, I'm just, again, grateful that you guys stuck with it. Yeah. That I didn't drive you crazy and too demanding and made you guys leave.
No. You're awesome as a leader. And Katie's been awesome as a support system to just make sure we have what we need. Yeah. As busy pastors, we're headed out. And so.
No, when I think about, because a lot of the success for the SRA team, beyond just R&D and figuring out what things do and don't work, since Katie's come on the team, to where it's not just waiting for me to get back in town, to get back to the office and to catch up on emails, to respond to things, and having Katie that can track our movement and all these other things. Katie just keeps track of all this stuff. And then when the email comes in and says, well, Will's going to go to hire things for us, getting all of that stuff coordinated and sent, so you guys have what you need.
Yep.
Well, it was funny, a few weeks ago, there was something you couldn't go to at Lutheran High South.
Yeah.
But my husband, Paul, could go. So then I started joking, we're just making like a pyramid scheme here. Yeah. Micah's at the top with the pink Cadillac, and he hired you, and then you're getting Paul to come in under you.
And that was hard for me because a little bit, because I was like thinking through like, this is my responsibility. Yeah. But then when I think through like Army of Volunteers, you're like, oh, really, this is what we want to do too, to expand our reach. Yeah. Because we can't just limit it to what we can do, because that's how SRA started. And so to get connected with Paul, and then I got to meet another pastor in the area, which I love. And Paul's story is amazing. To hear his passion for the arts and what he's doing is incredible. And then to just see his joy to head into Lutheran South and spend time with those young people was awesome. So it was really cool. So
that's one of those things when I started and when I was doing too much, especially early on. Ben sat me down and he was like, well, just remember, you're the director of recruitment. You're not one of many recruiters for the seminary. So your job is to create the plan, make sure the plan gets executed well, and set the culture for recruiting. He's like, and I'm not saying you can't do any recruiting. He's like, people ask me, I probably do the least amount of recruiting of everybody on our team, from admissions officers to SRAs, just because of making sure that the stuff is getting done. And that was a hard pill to swallow.
Delegating is hard.
Yeah. I mean, like, because I'm such a people person. And so you want to be the guy. And then it's like, even to the podcast. I used to produce the podcast. Now Dale produces the podcast.
Yeah.
I used to schedule the podcast. Now Kati schedules the podcast. And it runs so much smoother than it ever has.
Yeah. And this is such an important part about ministry too, right?
Yep.
Because as a pastor, one of the things that I learned, and it helped me being in a large church, because you could not do it all yourself.
Yep.
And you had to delegate. And while the times that's frustrating because you were like going and calling these volunteers and finding out who's going to help was challenging, it served me well in the small church.
Yeah.
Because then you just lift up your great staff and you say, hey, they're the ones who are able to do this awesome. I couldn't do ministry without them. I couldn't be a SRA without my amazing staff, without my administrative assistant, Tracy, who also does children's ministry there. And so she does tons of things. My worship director, Jill, she does lots of things to make sure worship is in place when we meet together. So learning how to delegate and not do it all on your own in ministry is very important. So
Yeah.
Well, we certainly couldn't recruit as aggressively as we are now. And it's one of those things where I think sometimes it's hard because you always feel like you're building a system that makes you replaceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
And at some point, you just have to be a little confident in yourself that if that's the case, then you've just done an excellent job, and perhaps there's something different for you after that. But also, it just something that I've learned in it that I thought that I've always kind of had, but it doesn't get really reinforced into you until you're in that moment of trusting the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That not only are they talented, but their heart is set on the same goals that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And so again, with the student recruitment ambassadors as well, like you guys are all so talented to where now, like, not that I was ever like, oh man, I don't want them to go to high schools for me because I want to be that guy, but just we get an invite, and I'm so comfortable now saying I'm not available, but I have somebody who is, and it's a shared email. And again, they're always so happy to have you guys, to where now I think they don't even reach out to me. They just reach out to you guys directly.
One of the beauties of the large church was that I had these pastors who would mentor me and give me like nuggets of truth that I would just like, I've held on to. And one of them was at my second church, and he just was like, you should always work yourself out of ministry. You should, so then Jesus can show you like what's next. Yeah. And that's been such a part of what ministry is for me. And you can see the moments of like spending time at All Nations or partner churches or whatever. If I was busy doing everything at Mount Calvary, then I couldn't spend time with other places, other churches, and where Jesus would have me go next. And recruitment's part of that. And so, yeah.
It's just been not just a blessing to have you on the team, but to stick with the team and to have somebody that's out there, doing it on a grassroots level, that if we're going to do it the way we're doing it, we're just unable to do it. I mean, again, people will look at recruitment at the seminary today and the partnerships we have and things like that. I just can't do that stuff without our staff here at the seminary, but that includes the recruiting ambassadors. And now we won't be able to continue to, not that we won't be able to, like, we couldn't continue to create the plans that we're creating and execute them and to do all these things if we didn't have lay volunteers who would come alongside us. And it's just one of these things where you start to see this massive network in the church helping you do the thing that you're set to do.
It goes back to that relational thing. Yeah.
And it can't, one blessing of Slate, our information system, we can market through it, so we can send mass emails, and we try not to send too many. But you can't manufacture that, like that personal relationship. So those mass emails can't do that part of it. And so having it's really just about the church's, the body of Christ is people, and going from this programmatic thing to this relational thing is, church programs had their time and their place.
Yeah.
And there's still some programs in the church that do well. I mean, I'm talking about it. We have one here, Vocatio.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But there's, people ask about its size, and it's grown over the years, and it does have a capacity for it to stay what it needs to be, which unfortunately means every summer there's a handful of people who can't come. And so then our task becomes, well, how do we get you connected to the seminary in a different way? Make sure that you don't miss out next summer. But it's just one of those things where, like, even at Vocatio, as it's grown, like, I try to have a personal conversation with every participant that comes, because that's the only way that we have that connection to them. And so it's such a beautiful thing that we get to do.
What the difference of my first years in youth ministry was there was a pressure about numbers. And the beauty of recruitment, that I can feel I can enter into a place that they've invited me into that space, and they can worry about numbers because they're, in ministry, and like, I want to get the most people here to be recruiting. And what they don't realize is I actually just want to have real conversations with these people. So it was one rainy / snowy night. I drove to Columbia, Missouri to Campus Lutheran Church. I didn't even know we had a Lutheran church called Campus, which is so sweet. And they're gathering, and it was like only 12 people. And she was like, sometimes we get 20, 25. And I was like, it's all good. Like, I just want to have real conversations. And from that, the majority of that group filled out RFIs for us.
I remember that night.
And we had conversations with people who had never considered ministry. And that was incredible, and put me on my radar. Campus Lutheran Church, when you're talking about, like, we could land in these churches any single Sunday, and there's 25% of that congregation is kids from college going there, who's our prime target to just have those conversations with. And it's such a wonderful thing. And so driving there for 2 hours and 2 hours back that night, it was a long night, and I'm getting old, and I was pretty tired. But it just filled my spirit so much to have, like, to listen to these young people, hear their stories, and while they were headed in a different direction, just get them to say, hey, consider dropping your nets as the disciples follow Jesus, like your booklet, and consider ministry. And I just want you to ask you to just consider that. If you're putting this time, showing up on this night, this rainy, snowy night, then you have a heart to listen and share God's word with his people. How is God going to use you to do that? Just drop your nets and think about that. That's been pretty awesome.
The Sunday before I officially started the seminary, I was doing one last thing for Lutheran Hour, and it was speaking at Campus Lutheran Church.
Oh, really?
Columbia.
Okay. Yeah.
Right now we have a vicar, Ethan. His last name is escaping me, but he was there when I was there, and is now he's on his vicarage.
Okay, sweet.
And I was when I was there, I was like, they were asking me Lutheran Hour questions in my future there. I was like, actually tomorrow I start as the director of recruitment at the seminary.
This is awkward, but
and he remembered that conversation, and he's such a great and talented young man. It's just one of those things where, again, you do these things, you're out in the world, you have these relationships, and you just never know how they're going to grow. You never know when you're out and you have this impact on Carly out in Olathe, Kansas, and one day could be a deaconess student here. And so it's just like I said, you want to use all of the resources that God makes at the disposal. And that was, again, drop your nets is just one of those things where my whole goal for that was just for the church to realize that this is a church goal. And even in my position, it's just like you just have to put your ego aside, which can be remarkably difficult for me sometimes, and let the goal be the point, not you. And that's kind of what I was trying to get behind with the SRAs and especially our teams. Just, okay, what can I do to help? And that's always got to be the question, I think, for any leader. So that the whole 4 years here have been remarkable, and the team has helped me grow. And when I saw your name on the schedule to record today, that's when I realized not only have we not had a different student recruitment ambassador on, which is I don't know how that's happened, especially in the days when we were doing this over Zoom. But you're local. We not had Will on before. Well, anyway, we appreciate you taking the time. Well, we could continue. We always get to this point where we want to keep having conversations, but the podcast has to end at some point. And before it does, we have a little segment called "Right for the Pickin' or Leave It on the Tree." We were asked. We'll just list a bunch of very subjective things.
Yep.
Which means that they are the most important things in the world.
Okay.
And if you like it, if you just say it's right for the picking, and if you want to give a little background behind that of why you like it, feel free. If you just want to just let it hang there, that's also fine. But if you don't like it, leave it on the tree.
Okay.
And the same goes that way. And so I've started asking this question first, because I gotta know. And so right for the picking, leave it on the tree. Pineapple on pizza.
Horrible. I'm a supreme get vegetables on there guy.
So leave it on the tree.
Leave it on the tree.
See, this is why Will is SRA.
I wonder what the rest of them think.
Instincts.
I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Next meeting, we'll ask.
Yeah.
You're a pineapple person? Is that the thing?
Well, so now I am because he keeps
Yeah.
asking this question. So to be obstinate, I say I like it.
Okay.
I've talked her into it.
I mean, I love pineapple.
Yeah.
Pineapple's fantastic. Yeah. No,
Not on pizza. In my
Well,
smoothie.
Someone suggested like a spicy pepperoni pineapple pizza. And to me, that sounds really good. Like not a ton of pineapple, but maybe just a little bit on a spicy
So what about
pepperoni pizza.
spicy pepperoni in a fruit smoothie?
There you go. Have you
Yum.
Have you been to Katie's Pizza?
Who?
Have you been to Katie's Pizza?
No.
Oh man.
Is it St. Louis style pizza?
No.
Don't do that. But
That was
there
gonna
used
be
to
my
there
next
used
one.
to be a Katie's here in Clayton,
Oh,
but now
okay.
the one I only know now is kind of out in West County.
By me. No. There's one right between my church and my house in Rock Hill.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's wonderful. It's awesome. There's one at the stadium too. But
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go to the stadium to have
Exactly.
it.
Anyway.
I was going to ask which stadium, but I think I know.
Okay, all right. The stadium.
This is St. Louis. Get hip.
Not a baseball fan. Anyway, I won't ask what I was going to ask, but ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree. Hopefully you guys know what this is. Prickly pear.
Like from a cactus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just that's. I think.
Well, okay. Do you go to Arizona like for best practices?
No.
Oh.
Horrible time of the year. Like
Yeah.
great time of year for weather. Horrible time for a soul pastor
Sure.
who's in the middle of like either Lent is in the season of
Imminent,
it or about to
yeah.
happen.
Okay.
Like I love it for like, hey, that's great to connect with people, but
Not,
I'm
okay.
super busy.
Well, prickly pear is a flavor that they put in a lot of things down there. So
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a fruit that grows
it
on
is a
cactus.
fruit, but it's almost an inedible fruit because of the seeds. Like it has to be like you have to get the juice out and flavor something. But
Right.
Yeah, never had it, so I
Okay.
guess leave it on the tree.
all right.
I'm also gonna leave it on the tree. We did have pear cactus when I lived in South Carolina. So that had fruit that grew from it, and we hurt ourselves trying to get at it. It's just like pomegranate. What's the point? So
so
useless.
Can I tell my crazy cactus story?
Please.
So we had to go to I have a buddy who's a pastor in Las Vegas, and he's actually he's the godfather of my son, and so we have this really, really, really close relationship, amazing relationship, kind of David and Jonathan relationship. This pastor and I, and so I got to be his best man, and so I said let's make this a trip for our family and not fly, but let's drive. And my son was convinced he wanted to get a cactus, like he had to find a cactus.
Okay.
But you can buy that here.
But he didn't care. Like he had to get a cactus, all right? And so we got to Albuquerque, and my wife was on a walk, and she tried to pick one and like pricked herself. And then he like Googled something that was like, oh, that'll be in there for 2 weeks. And she like freaked out in our hotel room. So finally, we're driving in we're driving through, what is it? Utah. Because I was so excited for my family to see Utah, and but I knew like no gas stations, like all this stuff. So we pulled off to this little like bathroom on the side, and he finally got his cactus, and he picked it up with 2 sticks and put it in his bag. We found that cactus 6 months later in his closet. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
but it can thrive there.
Yeah, was it
but
still?
also attract like who knows what in
That's
my
also
house.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids, man.
Yeah. Well, prickly pear is ripe for me. So,
Okay, there you go.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure it tastes delicious.
Prickly pear margaritas, prickly pear candy, lemonade. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
It's all watermelon. No, I'm just
Oh,
messing
my
around.
gosh.
Yeah, all right, right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Walking in wet grass.
Oh, leave it on the tree.
It's oddly specific. Yeah, right for the picking.
For some reason I thought no, it's a hard leave it on the tree for me.
Yeah.
No, that sounds kind of nice.
It's because like for some people it's just I could have just said walking in grass, which might change for some people, but walking in wet grass is awful. I can't think of many things that are worse than it.
And
I mean, if you're barefoot, if you're wearing
Even if you're barefoot,
like socks, that's just stocking. That's pretty terrible.
I can't think of any scenario where walking in wet grass is nice.
Okay.
when my kids see me without shoes, they're like, "Dad, what are you doing?" Unless I'm at a pool, because I always have shoes on. And if you walk in wet grass and you have awesome shoes, you mess them up.
I wouldn't walk through wet grass with shoes on, probably.
So-
Just barefoot.
So even like in mornings when I'm walking Scruffy, because this dog is so particular where he'll use the bathroom, and every once in a while I got to cut across the field, and if it's the morning and I haven't put on the right shoes
Yeah.
and your feet get soggy, and then after that, even if the grass hasn't been cut, there's going to be grass stuck to your shoes, even in shoes that I don't care what they look like, but the grass is stuck to your shoe is wet, who knows when it's going to dry out, your sock is wet, it just... And then even if you shower afterwards, like that feeling of a cold, damp foot
Should go barefoot then.
won't go away for, in my mind, years. It's so awful.
Wow.
Like there are a few things.
You feel
in the
more
world.
strongly about this than pineapple on pizza.
I
Okay.
do.
right.
The reason why it's on the very bottom of my list, and it's there because I had to do it the other day, and I'm just like, who likes this? Everybody.
Kind of nice.
Everybody's gonna be looking at you differently now, Katie.
That's fine. Oh, it's my turn. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Kayaking.
Never really done it.
Oh.
Like I did whitewater rafting.
In a kayak?
No,
okay.
no. We did it in a raft.
In a raft, okay. I was
But
gonna say
I've-
that's hardcore if you don't do it very
But
often.
never done, like, I think I've been in a kayak, like, at a camp when I was a youth pastor. But then I just had a reason not to because they all wanted to do it. you
Yeah.
know, So I think leave it on the tree.
Oh, that's right for me. Kayaking is good stuff. I love nature.
Yeah. Right for the picking.
Yeah.
For sure. We're excited to do it here because I think, I don't know, St. Louis is so close to like really outdoorsy things, it seems like.
Okay.
So we're
Especially if you go.
excited to try it.
I mean, you could go different directions. If you ever go south, especially towards the Arkansas border, there are fantastic places to kayak. You don't have to go that far south, but
Yeah.
there's some really good stuff south of here.
Yeah. My family has a lake house in Table Rock. And it's just awesome.
was
Like
just
we're
about
on
to
this
say Table
sweet
Rock.
peninsula that,
All
Yeah,
right.
just-
See you there.
yeah, exactly. It's cool.
And there are a ton of spring-fed rivers in Missouri, and can get a little rapid, but not whitewater
Yeah,
rafting.
yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, check it out. All right, last one for me. Right for the pick and leave it on the tree. Spaghetti squash. Spaghetti squash.
I mean, I think I'd take it for the health value, you know, like it's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, so yeah, I won't leave it on the tree. I'll take it. Right for the picking.
Yeah, it's right. Depending on how it's cooked. But yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it on the tree. I've started to get into squash,
Mm-hmm.
but spaghetti squash. Like if somebody uses it instead of pasta, it's a little offensive to the palate in my mind. But
Kind of smushy.
just the texture. It's just
Yeah.
not nice. Yeah.
Well, then that will inspire my last
There we
one
go.
that I have asked before, but I'm going to ask it again. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Tofu.
I'm in the middle. Like miso soup,
Oh, yeah.
totally right for the picking. Awesome. I don't use a lot of it otherwise, though. So,
Yeah. So just meh.
yeah, but
Yeah. It's not walking in grass, but it's along the lines of pineapple on pizza. I just don't get it. And the texture. Anytime, it's like one of those things where people say you can make the texture better. Maybe the outside of it.
You can get the outside crispy, but you really can't do anything about the inside.
No,
so
you cannot.
I get it, but I love it.
And too much soy, it's just not good for you.
No.
Okay.
Turns into estrogen in your body. Think about that, people.
Life advice.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Well, Will, before we sign off, we always like to ask our guests, if you had one piece of advice for anybody who's thinking about becoming a church worker, what would that one piece of advice you'd have for them?
Just start having conversations with people now.
Yeah.
Ask pastors, be ready to talk about it now. I think it's an awesome thing. We just did at Missouri District, what's the thing that you would tell why consider this? And I said, I study a book that never gets old. And because every book you read, right, is old, but not Scripture. Always living. So if you want to keep studying a book for the rest of your life and it never gets old, this is the way to do it. And that's what I love about being a pastor, is every single week, I don't know where the Holy Spirit's going to take me. And then I get there and I'm like, wow, this was awesome, and I can't wait to share it with my people. So.
Look at that.
Awesome.
That's good stuff. Yeah. Well, Will, it's a joy to work with you, but also an absolute joy to finally have you on the podcast. It's somehow been way too long, but it's great. And thank you all for tuning in. And if you are thinking about being a pastor, deaconess, teacher, DCE, or anything like that, make sure you fill out a request for information. If you see us out, scan the QR code so we can reach out to you, begin that conversation, and you begin that process of having a life, not only studying Scripture, but also teaching it on a day-to-day basis. This book that speaks to us each and every day, something brand new. And that could be your job. That could be what you get to do for the rest of your life, is to share God's word with people. And you likely get paid for it. It's win-win. Not only that, if you yourself, you're not going to be a pastor, teacher, deaconess, DCE, or the like, but you always look at somebody in your congregation and you think, man, they'd be a great pastor. Well, make sure you tell them, because you could be that influence in their life that gets them to move forward, to reach out to us so we can begin this conversation, because it's not something we're meant to do alone. Christ calls us into his body to be the church. And so the discernment process is for you, but we'd love to do it with you. So get them to fill out a request for information, reach out to us so we can begin that conversation. If you know a high schooler, we still have a few spots left in Vocatio this year. In my experience, the next 2 to 3 weeks are going to be the weeks where I get flooded with registrations. And if you want to come and spend that week with us, register now. So you don't get left out this summer. And if you do miss the registration deadline or you get put on the waiting list, Vocatio happens every summer. So if we can't see you this summer, we'll see you next summer. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time under the fig tree. Take care.